Welcome to the AVAIL podcast, where we dig deep and talk about the art of leadership. My name is Virgil Sierra, and today we're sitting down with Shane and Sue Schlesman. The Schlesmans lead in Richmond, Virginia, where Shane has pastored for over 20 years. Together, they are passionate about helping raise up healthy leaders, and recently they co-authored their new book, which we will talk about in today's episode, Death by Pastoring, Finding the Heartbeat of a Healthy Leader. So, lean in, leaders, and let's get started. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the AVAIL podcast, where we roll up our sleeves, dig down deep, and get into the art of leadership. I'm your host, Virgil Sierra. I'm the lead pastor of Vertical Church, aka Iglesia Vertical in South Florida. And I'm your host for this podcast, where every week we come up with a new episode speaking to amazing leaders like the ones we have today. We got a combo today. We have a power couple today, Shane and Sue Schlesman. Shane and Sue, it's great to have you guys on the AVAIL podcast. How you feeling?
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
I love that power couple. We're a power couple.
Yeah, who knew?
I like that. Virgil, what an honor to be on your podcast. We love what you're doing in Florida. You not only lead a great church, but you lead a great podcast, and we glean a lot from the leaders that you've been just bringing as a great resource for all of us. So thank you. Thank you for having us.
It is a blessing to have you guys here. I'm excited to get into our conversation. First of all, because the book that you guys co-authored, Death by Pastoring, Finding the Heartbeat of a Healthy Leader. First of all, it caught my attention immediately. Second of all, I think it's going to be really interesting to just hear the inspiration behind this book. Before we jump into that conversation, I would love for our AVAIL audience to get to know a little bit more about who is Shane and Sue. Where are you guys? Where's the church you pastored? Talk to us a little bit about yourselves.
Yeah, thank you. We're from Richmond, Virginia. We've been here for a long time. Been at West End Assembly of God for the last 23 years. We've raised our kids here. This is family to us. We've been on staff for 19 years. I was 10 years as the family life pastor, and then the last 9 years as the lead pastor. Before that, I grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia, and I met this beautiful girl in college from the Midwest, from Minnesota. And we've been married 34 years. I better let her tell the details. I'll mess it up, Virgil.
Yeah, we're heading into our 35th year, so we're excited. We raised three sons. We have 3 adult sons, 2 daughters-in-law. No grandkids yet, but we're really praising God for our children and for the girls that they have chosen, that they all love God and are growing in Him, and that is the biggest blessing.
So cool.
Parents can ask for.
So cool to have them serving in our church. You just love it.
Yeah. There's nothing better than seeing your kids growing up, loving Jesus, loving the church, and loving you as mom and dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I love hearing that from you guys. I think as pastors and people who have a heart for not only the church, but for other pastors and leaders, I can imagine that there's a little bit of inspiration there for this book. So the book that you guys have co-authored is Death by Pastoring, Finding the Heartbeat of a Healthy Leader. Talk to us. How was this book born? What inspired this? I'd love to hear that story.
Well, as a lot of books and podcasts and sermons, a lot of times they're birthed out of pain, right? This one was definitely that for us. 2.5 years ago, I had a stress-induced heart attack that almost took my life. And it's a miracle that I'm here, but it was also crazy to us that it happened. I've done bike racing and tons of marathons and triathlons, even an Ironman. I had been checked 6 ways from Sunday and given clean bill of health and data boys all along the way. It was a shock. So much so I don't have family history or anything like that. So that was sent us on a deep dive into how did this happen? And the answer, everything we learned and everything we studied pointed to stress. And
Wow.
in fact, the doctor,
Yeah. The morning after the heart attack, when he goes down the list of all the things that you should not be doing, which cause heart attacks, none of which were true for Shane. He said, "Do you have a stressful job?" And we both laughed because we have been, I mean, church work is hard, period, but we have been in an incredibly stressful season for quite a while. And we both laughed, and he said, "Maybe you need to find a different job." And we thought, okay, well, we know that God's called us to do ministry, and whether we stay here or go someplace else, ministry is hard and it's stressful. And obviously, we need to learn a different way to do this.
Yeah.
If we're going to fulfill the calling that God's put on us, because we know this is not what he intended to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And the book's not the answer for everything, but it is a great snapshot of where we are now. And boy, we hope people join us on the journey with that, because we are learning a lot. And so we're just passing that along and just being transparent. Hopefully this can be the book's a cautionary tale of, hey, there's a better way to do this.
And a practical handbook, honestly, for reassessing how we work, how we rest, and what God expects, how he expects us to do ministry. So it's helpful.
Sure. That's good. And you guys have been in and around ministry and leading ministry for many, many years. I can imagine. Again, I have not experienced, Shane, what you've been through, or Sue, or for that matter, what you guys have been through. But I could imagine the initial response, to going through something like that, which is can be very traumatic, right? Emotionally, physically. Yeah. I imagine the initial response was very much like, well, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for us? Which is normal and natural. But then as I'm seeing this book, what I imagine at some point it turned into is, how can we now help? Which is what you're saying. And who's on your hearts as you guys bring this book to life? Yeah. Who's on your hearts?
Yeah.
And why?
Well, the title is a pretty narrow one, but I think everyone has experienced stress. So anyone leading in a stressful situation, it's for leaders who are carrying a weight in their leadership. Death by Pastoring, I think it was Harvard Business School that did a study years ago that the number one most stressful job in the world is a pastor. So I think we started with the most stressful, and boy, it can cascade down from there. So we hope a lot of people, a lot of leaders, and a lot of especially ministry leaders can really catch some of the things and go with us on what we're learning.
I also want to say for pastors' families. So, when trauma happens to one person in the family, it happens to everybody in the family. Yeah. And I think a wife, particularly a ministry wife, there's a lot of smile, pray, keep your mouth shut kind of mentality. And even if she's allowed to walk in her gifting, whatever happens to her husband is happening to her, and she's not in control of the outcome. She's not in control of his schedule. Yeah. There's a lot of residual trauma. And I talk to pastors' wives all over the place, and there's a constant theme, a struggle with living in the fishbowl, feeling resentment or bitterness or defeatism. You love what you love ministry, or you wouldn't be in it. But there's this tension all the time of what it's doing to your family, what it might be doing to your kids, what it might be doing to your husband. Even if it's a co-pastoring situation, there's a different kind of stress that falls on the wife or the husband, I guess, the spouse of whoever's in charge. And so we address that too.
Yeah, and it was unique enough that we felt it important for us to both write it together. So you get both our perspectives
Yeah.
all the way through it, for sure.
It's a little raw.
Yeah. It has some, we're very, very transparent people. So.
You will not feel judged when you read this.
Yeah.
Something that caught my attention looking at the table of contents in the first part, because there's 3 parts. Part 1, Silent Killer. Part 2, A New Way to Work. And then part 3, A New Way to Rest. But something that caught my attention is chapter 3, What We Didn't Learn in Seminary. And I can't help but think that there's a lot of things that might pop up in that chapter, including by the way, thinking that stress is one of the important things that we need to pay attention to. So I wonder if there's any thoughts that you can share with us about some of those points of things that we didn't learn in seminary.
Oh, that's such a good question. You're right, because there's 100 things we didn't learn in seminary, right? As a pastor, Virgil, you're like, man, where was the book on this one? And I think stress is at the top of that list, because for me, and Sue and I have been in ministry our entire married lives together, 34 years of doing ministry. I've led businesses during some of that time, and vocationally, and been vocational pastor. There's just nothing like that stress that comes from leading in that 24/7 gauntlet. So yeah, we talk about, man, they teach you to work hard. Every intern you probably ever had, every internship I was ever in, and every internship I ever led, number 1 on the list, right, is hard work. And so we were all taught to work really hard and to have some boundaries, but really
they're sort of more hypothetical.
They're hypothetical boundaries. Soft boundaries. In a perfect world, idealism, but no one
family
actually
first. But yet you're on call 24 hours a day. It's sort of like in the business world, you had the same thing: family, then your work. But that's not how you're rewarded, and that's not how you're judged. You're judged on your performance, and so the church is very performance driven. We're numbers driven. We're success driven.
Sure.
And then we're judged if the family is suffering from it, or if we have mental health issues from it, or
massive breakdowns in pastoral life all over the place, and everyone points to that person and their character, which I think of course is true, but if we're living under this massive pressure, who's teaching us to work from rest rather than work till you collapse and then recover
and then go on vacation
and then go do it again? That's what we're taught. And this is about, hey, here's some results if you keep doing this, and here's some honest reflection of what we're learning that, we didn't learn in seminary.
Yeah. So along that line, I think it's easy to grab a hold of misconceptions, right? And I think that there are common misconceptions that leaders can have, even about stress or dealing with stress. What would you guys say is a common misconception about stress?
You want me to go first?
Yeah, go ahead.
For me, because I'm a perfectionist, and so that is my issue to work on. My misconception about leadership stress is that if I just do my job better, then my stress will stop. So if I just complete this task, if this event is perfect, if this sermon is perfect, if I meet all the needs, if I do all the things, then I won't feel stressed because I'm doing a good job.
She likes to make lists and check them off. Feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it plays once again into that performance-based mentality. And the truth is, the work will never be finished. It will never be perfect. And people are, the joke is, ministry would be great if it wasn't for the people. I mean, we love the people, but the people are what make it hard.
Sure.
And they're not satisfied. We're not satisfied because we keep making ministry about what's happening here on this earth instead of the kingdom of God. So, so that's probably my biggest misconception, is that I could get this right at some point.
Yeah, I think for me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you think if I'm not being honest here, but
All right.
but but my big misconception was I could just go work out more. I could, as long as I had a stress outlet. Man, I was working out 6 days a week, and because I need it, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm in racing and competition. I have a
Yeah.
competition outlet, and as long as I take enough breaks, spend enough time with the family, take enough breaks, and have an outlet, I can work as hard as I want to go. And man, I'm diesel now. I work as hard as I need to, as long as I have an outlet and as long as I spend time with my family, then I'm good. And that wasn't true. And they call it a silent killer for
Wow.
a reason. And you don't even know
Mm.
what's happening in your body while you're running hard and going and getting it done. It's harvest season. It's harvest season. All the pastors are like, yeah, I got to keep going. And that's a huge misconception, I think, of stress. Like, as long as you do this, then you're good. That's not true.
Yeah. There's the idea that workaholism, one, isn't sinful, and two, isn't going to kill you. Even if you're in shape,
Mm.
like that, your body
Yeah.
is not working against itself, which it absolutely is. It causes heart damage. Stress causes heart damage physically,
Mm.
biologically, spiritually,
Yeah.
emotionally. It causes damage.
Mm.
I love this conversation because we don't often have this conversation, which might be one of the reasons why more people are affected in negative ways physically, emotionally, mentally, not to mention relationally, with all the burdens that come with not being well. I mean, so the book title is "Death by Pastoring." I guess you could apply it to workaholism in any area, but we know the stress that comes with pastoring. Here's what I'd love to hear from you guys, because I know in the book. By the way, for all our AVAIL listeners, this is a book. This is a book you're going to want to get not only for yourself, but for any other leaders that are with you, any other pastors that are in your
Mm.
circles. Death by Pastoring: Finding the Heartbeat of a Healthy Leader. Um, I know that the third part of the book is a new way to rest, and I was wondering if maybe you guys can share maybe a couple of practical kind of handles, of what are some ways, practically speaking, that pastors and leaders can get into a better rhythm of health, and truly, and truly finding like something that really brings the rest that brings health.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because, the book in the three sections of, the silent killer, but there's hope. And ultimately there's redemption, because we're on that now. We're on this redemptive cycle now. And I think, the guiding passages for us, we share a lot in the book, about Matthew 11, and what does it look like to be yoked with Jesus, to be partnered. The fact that he used that work tool analogy means that Jesus actually believes that it's possible for you to have rest while you're working if you're partnered with him. And so we've just reevaluated everything that we're doing through that lens.
Mm.
Who's and essentially asking yourself this question: who's carrying the weight? Who's carrying the weight for the event that's coming up? Who's carrying the weight for this Sunday?
Right.
Who's carrying the weight for,
What
and
people think of the event and
yeah,
what people think of you.
and you find out you're actually carrying a lot more than you realize, which means you got to have some practical ways to identify that. And let me just say the
Mm.
biggest one.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest one for me has been, we all as pastors do a lot of counseling, or we have a professional counselor on staff, and we have a counseling center, and we provide a lot of that. Or we think, oh, if we're in crisis, we need counseling. But I'm saying, man, if you're a pastor, I'm just going to say it. The most practical thing I could say, if you don't get anything else and you shut this off right after this, go get a counselor,
Meet
because
regularly.
Come on.
I'm in this discovery. That's why we said finding the heartbeat of a healthy leader, because I'm discovering how much weight I'm carrying, Virgil, and you don't
Yep.
realize it. until you do the work to discover it.
Yeah, you don't realize until you have a crisis that your coping mechanisms are wrong. They're insufficient.
Yeah.
They come from our past, from our baggage, from our identity, and we get really good at shaping ministry around ourselves, gathering staff that fit with us or whatever, and we can easily mask places of unhealthiness because we've figured out how to plug and play for somebody else to do something that stresses me out, which is not in itself a bad idea, but we have to do the unpacking personally.
And then once you're doing that, what's the redemptive part of it?
Paradigm,
the redemptive part of the new paradigm. And it comes from a passage that it's ironically we use around death more than anything. I say it at funerals. You've used it at funerals. We've all quoted it at funerals, and that's Psalm 23. That has become a whole paradigm for me. Instead of a passage about death, it's become a passage about life for us. So we've put everything through this paradigm to discover what it looks like for me to lead with Jesus as my shepherd, who makes me lie down, who leads me beside still waters, who restores my soul. And that keeps me off the rat race of my own path. Because the next phrase, right, is on the paths of righteousness for his name's sake, right? So practically, you need to discover you're on that rat race, and you need a new paradigm to put everything through. So for us, that has been a constant work, and it's never ending. We're still learning it and still trying to apply it today.
I love this. I love this conversation. A quick question. I was curious. I can't remember when you shared with me, when you guys got married, were you already in ministry when newlyweds?
We headed into ministry.
Yeah,
right
we were serving like crazy.
We always
in
served.
college. I was a youth. I wasn't a youth pastor. I was a youth leader, but there wasn't a youth pastor. So I was I led the youth group.
In fact, I was at college. Yeah, I was at church 7 days a week because I taught in the Christian school. I taught middle school in the Christian school. I had those kids 5 days a week, and then we had youth group with them on Wednesday. We had church with them on Sunday. I literally saw the same 100 teenagers. So every day.
So we met each other serving in the church nonstop, and then we got married and just went right in, man. Just dove headlong in. I was running a business and pouring into this youth group at the same time. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a really interesting question. Okay, and I want you guys to think about this. Okay, you know how sometimes as a couple, a pastor couple, we sit down with another couple, right, to maybe bring some biblical guidance or some counseling or some encouragement. If you guys had a 1 hour sit down with yourselves as newlyweds, and you were able to just say, hey, we're going to unpack some thoughts and advice for the journey, knowing what you know now, 30 something years into marriage and ministry, what and obviously connected with the heart of what's on your hearts right now in this book and this message. What are some of those bullet points that you're going to share with the younger Shane and the younger Sue?
You want me to go first?
You mean after we scream, "Don't do it"? No.
Well, we just had a young couple in our house last night for dinner, and we had the same conversation. And so I'll just say that. I'll start with that, and then you can add to that. But
I'm ready. I got plenty of advice for young.
And we say this in a lot of stress, and when we speak to pastors about stress too. Your calling is not the same thing as your vocation. So God calls us, he equips us, he gifts us for ministry.
That's good.
And then somebody pays us whatever amount of money to come and work for, to help them, to equip the saints to do the work of the ministry, etc. And the lines can easily blur because our identity gets caught up in the place that we have served, or maybe we built, or maybe we founded or took over, or we're changing the DNA, or wherever we are on that whole timeline of a ministry intersecting with our personal lives and our personal callings. It becomes frightening and confusing when stress reaches a point that your life is no longer sustainable. Does this mean I have to quit? And if I quit, what am I doing next? Because God called me here. Well, people hired you. That's not the same thing as God calling. And I mean, you would think that the pastor numbers would have have settled into a better percentage since COVID. But in COVID, 38% of pastors were thinking every day about quitting. And now it's up to 42.
Wow.
Yeah, it's climbing.
It's climbing because they're carrying the weight of everyone's issue with everything. They're trying to keep all the balls in the air at the same time. And pastors aren't quitters. Like, they'll die trying to make this thing right because they're committed to what God wants them to do. And I hate to keep using the same word, it's unsustainable for pastors to live in the pressure cooker day in and day out. And to tell our younger selves, I would say, don't do it. Where you're working, even where you're serving, does not define who God's called you to be. It's an open door for you, but it doesn't need to be the place where you die trying to do what God's called you to do. Dying for the church is not the same thing as dying for Jesus. So don't do it.
And it's not what Jesus needs us to do if Jesus already died for the church. So there's that too.
Yeah.
Man, what I would say, Berger, it's such a great question because I have so many things I want to say, but I'm just going to say one of them, which is the same thing. I think I miss this with my boys. I mean, they're young adults now and they're serving and they're all hard workers. I mean, they caught that right from us. They're hard workers. They know what it is to work hard, and they're all successful at what they're doing. But I wish I could teach young Shane how to get off that rat race and actually work from rest and restoration. I would teach Shane how to rest and say, if you can learn this, some of the most powerful things that are going to happen in your life are going to follow times of rest and letting God make you lie down in green pastures, letting God lead you beside still waters so that he restores your soul. And then the right path that you're on is really about him. And now the most powerful things you're ever going to see in your life are going to come after those seasons of rest. And if you don't have that every week, if you don't have that every month, if you don't have that every year planned out, you're going to miss out on something. And I think I would really focus in on that.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. I think that advice you would give to your younger selves, you would give to your children, you would give to other pastors and leaders. I love that we're talking about this because if this part of our lives and our marriages and our families, if this part isn't well, it's hard for all the other parts to be well. I want to help people connect with you guys and also kind of know how they can get the book specifically and any of the resources that are connected to it. Shane and Sue, how can people, first of all, how can they connect with you guys, or where can they go as well to get the book and the resources?
Well, thank you for asking that, because really what we want pastors and ministry leaders and people carrying leadership stress to go with us on the journey, because we don't have all the answers. But if you read the book, you're going to see we bear it all. And so we just open our lives up and tell you a whole bunch of stories about how we got it wrong and what we're learning. And we have a podcast that we do like this one, but it's called Stress Test, the Heartbeat of a Healthy Leader. and we interview healthy leaders, because healthy leaders usually went through some kind of moment, maybe not my story exactly, but they have a story.
They have catalytic moments where they said, we can't do it like this anymore.
Yeah. So we'd love for you to join us in that journey. You can find Stress Test on Facebook and Instagram. Stress Test Podcast on Instagram and Stress Test on Facebook, YouTube. Subscribe to that. Then you go on the journey with us, and of course, obviously, we hope you get this book because we really, really want our story to be something that will hopefully inspires others to not have to go down this path. And you can go to deathbypastoring.com. If you want to subscribe to going with us on this journey, Sue does a great job getting some newsletters out and really just telling some recent stories of what's happening. They can text a number, Virgil, and text the word stress to this number, 833 204 2158, 833-204-2158, and just text the word stress, and that'll automatically get them synced with us.
We're really
that's good.
Yeah, we're thankful for AVAIL for the publication process, but AVAIL also has put together a whole package so that pastors can join a master class, they can get the book study, they can walk through with their whole staff. We think this would be super helpful for boards who are supposed to be supporting their pastors and keeping their pastors healthy, elder boards, deacon boards, however the church is structured, to walk through curriculum and find out, how do we keep our pastor healthy? What does he need? And you can buy all of that through AVAIL. We'll also share that information and other resources through the information that we get.
And you can find Sue. She writes a lot, I mean,
I do.
Sue writes every day, and she has so many great things out, articles out in certain magazines, but also on her website. So you can just go to SueSchlesman.com, and her great book, Soul Speak, Praying Change in Unexpected Places, is a huge inspiration and really perfect for this topic too.
Thanks. Thanks, honey.
Yeah, I get a lot from your writing. Just so you know.
And one of my favorite. It's interesting because the chapter that people resonate with most in that book, because I take 7 kinds of prayers, is the chapter on 2 chapters on lamenting.
Yeah,
and that is an important aspect of managing stress, is lamenting to the Lord instead of carrying that weight and trying to do 100 different things to solve problems. But anyway.
Yeah, and she's got a bunch of stuff coming out. She's in Influence magazine. You can check out all that. But if you go to her website, you'll see all of that. And we'd love to have you go with us on the journey. Thank you.
Yes, that's so good. You heard it, everybody. deathbypastoring.com. You could text the word stress to 833-204-2158. You can check out Sue Schlesman. Is it .com?
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Books are on there.
SueSchlesman.com. Yeah, these resources are going to help you in so many ways. I'm going to just mention real quick the AVAIL Journal. Everybody, AVAIL Journal. This comes out quarterly. Many of you are aware of the AVAIL Journal. You're probably subscribed to it. You can try our free trial subscription by going to availjournal.com. We love getting resources in leaders' hands. Would you guys agree that good resources help you lead well?
Absolutely. Thank you for doing that.
I'd love to kind of round off the conversation with a final thought, a final nugget, final encouragement from each of you.
You want to go first?
Yeah, I would just say, I think what God is impressing on us most is there's a difference between rest and restoration. And restoration happens proactively. Jesus' most powerful miracles happened after he was spending time with the Father and resting. And we talk about this in the book a good bit, but learning to rest, not lie down and sleep, which we also need, but to meditate, to take Sabbath, to take spiritual retreats, to plan to rest so that I can work with the Lord.
Yeah. And I think that's real. Go ahead.
That's
I was just going to say that really ties into what I was going to say too. I think if I would sum up one thing, it would be kind of a story a little bit. It won't be a long one, I promise. It'll be a short one. But I took all three of our boys to work with me, and whether I was running a business or pastoring, I always took them. Take your kid to work day has been a tradition of ours as well with others too. But the scripture talks about returning to the faith of a child, and there's something powerful about that, because when my kids came to work with me, and maybe you remember if you went to work with your dad, when dad has the treasurer walk in the office and talk about how I'm not sure how we're going to get there, and I don't know how we're going to get this money and all this stuff, and when you take a phone call from a really huge crisis, when you're just, as a kid, this is the most fun day ever. Like, you're just and you're not stressed. Like, my kids weren't stressed about hearing about the money or hearing about this crisis or that crisis. They just came home and told mom that it was the greatest day ever.
They're walking around getting candy in the office and carrying their little bag.
They're having a blast. And I would just say, Virgil, man, there's so many ministry leaders and so many folks giving their lives in ministry, that if you could just return to that place, that time when you didn't have that carrying that weight of that ministry. Jesus says there's a way to do this. There's a way to go to work with dad. Mm-hmm. And I would love it. I want to see that happen in my life more often. I'm still growing in it. And I would love it to see other pastors begin to go to work this way and really learn what it is to be yoked to Jesus. So thank you so much for having us on this. Has been great.
Yeah.
It's been awesome. I really appreciate your guys' hearts. We always do this because it's kind of part of our culture here at AVAIL, but we just want to honor you guys on behalf of Dr. Sam Chand, Martijn Van Tilborg, the whole AVAIL team. We're thankful for pastors like yourselves who are willing to pull away the curtain and be vulnerable and open about, hey, this is what we've been through. This is what we've learned. And by God's grace, we hope it helps you. So we thank you for your leadership as pastors. Thank you for what you're doing in the local church and even globally through missions. And thank you for writing this book. We're really proud of you guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And every person you just mentioned has meant a lot to our lives and poured into us. So what an honor to now have a chance to join them and try and help others. So thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us on the podcast.
Yes. Sue and Shane, what a blessing it is. This book is, by faith we declare, is going to bless so many people and help so many people. Hey, AVAIL audience, we love you guys. We're thankful for you guys, as always, connecting with us. The book, it's a good book. You're going to want to get it for yourself and for other pastors and leaders. Death by Pastoring, Finding the Heartbeat of a Healthy Leader. This is going to help you. It's going to be an encouragement for you. It's going to help you help others who might need this encouragement as well. We hope you've been able to take some great things from this conversation, maybe share it with some leaders and pastors that you know. On behalf of AVAIL, my name's Virgil Sierra, lead pastor of Vertical Church Iglesia Vertical, your host on this weekly podcast where we talk about leadership and the art of leadership. Hope to catch you next time right here on the AVAIL podcast. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the AVAIL podcast with our guests, Shane and Sue Schlesman. You can find out more about Shane and Sue, and you can get their book by going to deathbypastoring.com. For more leadership resources, check us out at theartofleadership.com. And make sure to claim your free trial subscription of the AVAIL Journal at availjournal.com. As always, I'm your AVAIL podcast host, Virgil Sierra. Muchas gracias. Thank you for connecting with us to learn the art of leadership here at the AVAIL podcast.